Greetings and God bless. I just wanted to share some thoughts. I was doing some research about homeopathy, and homeopathy is a type of diluted energetic medicine. It has no property of the element that's in it, so it's different than like using herbs or essential oils, which are a concentrated type of product made from an herb or whatever. So homeopathy is more of a kind of an imprint. It's sort of like it's kind of hard to describe. Maybe I'll come up with something more as we go along. So I'm looking at, I want to recommend the Homeopathy Plus website. I put their links in the description box. And they have a really nice list of when there's a disaster. So when there's a hurricane, earthquake, these are good remedies to have on hand. And so I think it's really handy, and I wanted to review them. So hopefully this is okay with Homeopathy Plus. And so I am not a certified trained homeopath. I have taken a class in Bach flower remedies, so I'm somewhat familiar with the principles of these products, and I have used this type of thing for probably 30 years off and on. I am by no means an expert. But anyways, I just wanted to brainstorm here, and I wanted to talk about electromagnetic frequencies, the ones that are used. So, and influenza. I think those are interesting, and they don't talk about EMFs here per se, but we'll get into that. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. So there's 3 pages. One is like the initial situation, the initial crisis. The second page is more of like, stabilizing the situation. And the third page is kind of going the next steps after the crisis is over. So the first page, they're talking about shock. And so they mention aconite napellus. And I will probably not pronounce these Latin names properly, but you can go to the page and see for yourself. And so that one is good for when somebody's agitated, restless, fearful, anxious, or in a state of terror and convinced they will die. But it's my understanding that this is good for relieving these mental emotional symptoms, but other symptoms that may be present at the same time that are physical. They're talking about, so there's a homeopathic remedy made from anything. I mean, it can be from a rose, it can be from ginkgo biloba or pine trees, and of course, so they can make one from the plant, the poppy seed, the poppy plant, which is opium. And so this is an energetic remedy. It has no part of it in it, but no part of the poppy in it. But this apparently is helpful for those who are in such emotional shock that they're withdrawn, not responding, and dazed. And I would say a lot of people seem to be in this state, and maybe it's considered kind of cool or something. But I think humanity has been traumatized by the destruction of gender roles and the destruction of family, the destruction of a connection to God, being familiar, understanding what God's about, and reading the Bible, and the destruction of elderly people, the lack of elderly people, or the lack of experienced, sane, sober, mature people available to young people and children. I think our society, our civilization has been under attack, and people have just been torn apart, and the very fabric of humanity has been uh, just decimated. And so, people are in shock, and and I haven't even talked about all of these. So they say the remedy can be given as often as every 15 seconds if the person's symptoms are severe. And then once things settle down, you can either stop, um, or if there's no improvement by 3 doses, try a different remedy. So choose a better remedy that matches. So, and there should be an improvement by the 3rd dose. And make sure you're giving enough of the dose. So then there's the next section is about hysteria and panic, and there's aconite, nepellus, and so this is for the restless and agitated, and we just described that before. Um, and this can also apply to palpitations, feelings of hyperventilation. Then continuing on with the hysteria, panic section, ignitia, amara. And so this is for rapidly changing moods, crying with sobbing. The person may hyperventilate, twitch, jerk, have cramps, be unpredictable, pull away from comfort and reassurance, and may sweat from the face. Then there's this next section, and I'm not going to read it all, about injuries, wounds, hazardous effects. So what I found interesting was this one about, so it's called, hold on a second, sorry. Okay, well, so I am interested in electromagnetic issues, and so when we are bombarded with cell phone towers, when we have a smart meter right next to us, and the router on the other side of us, and our mobile phone in our pocket, and the laptop sitting on our lap, and then the person right next to us has their mobile phone and their laptop. And so all of these devices are trying to contact other devices or cell phone towers. And so we get dehydrated just because our cells are being fried literally by all of these frequencies that are zipping and zapping all around us. And I was just telling you about the ones that you have and that's in your room, not to mention the other people in the next apartment over, or in their car driving by, and whatever new appliances that have been installed since I last learned about what's out there. So there's something called China Officionalis, and that relieves exhaustion and debility that follows the loss of body fluids, such as blood, sweat, and diarrhea. So I think that people who are being cooked by having all the devices in their pockets and on their lap and under the cell phone towers and the router right there and everything, just all this Wi-Fi, I wonder if that might be a good remedy for dehydration. And again, I'm just picking and choosing from this section because there's a lot of pieces here. There's another remedy I think is interesting called carbo vegetabilis. And so I think this is, being that we're talking about disasters, catastrophes. So sometimes there's this situation that occurs when people are going skydiving, and and I've heard about this with skydiving, and I've heard about this with scuba diving, that there is something that happens to people where they they don't pull the parachute cord, or they don't breathe from the breathing apparatus. And and I think like something happens and nobody's explained it, because when this has happened to people, they're just dead. We don't get a um, get to do a scientific study on this situation. But so I wonder, and so some people go into shock, and they're kind of in this, maybe it's kind of this ultra parasympathetic frozen state. So this one, debilis, long story short, so it's called a corpse reviver. And so I wonder if, like at that concert where all those people, they were suffocating apparently, like there or um, so some people were saying that they couldn't breathe, and then there was a lot of heart attacks, people who had just gotten an injection. So I wonder if having carbovegetabilis on hand for first responders in those kinds of situations might be a good thing. Of course, I understand people don't believe in homeopathy, but anybody who cares, like, I think it might be a helpful thing to have for these kind of catastrophic situations. It treats many near-death states. Uh, for those with the following symptoms: faintness, collapse, exhaustion, chilliness, cold sweat, gasping for air, wanting to be fanned, flatulence, distension, heart failure, blue or mottled skin. And they also recommended Lorocerasus. So we will get to, well, I'll just get to it now, actually. So that Lorocerasus, it's a good remedy for lack of reaction when the heart or respiratory system is in failure. The person may be in a state of collapse, have chilliness that is unhelped by warmth, be gasping for breath or suffocating, be blue or mottled. So, anyways, I think that's an interesting one, a helpful one for people who are in shock. So I'm just going to skim over these other ones because I'm just more interested in this EMF and influenza topic. So there's and these other ones that are on the list may even apply to influenza and electromagnetic illness. But so the next one I'm going to talk about is phosphorus, and this one is for electrical burns or electroshock. So that is different than an electromagnetic frequency. I do not know the whole spectrum, how to describe the difference between an electric shock and electromagnetics. I mean, it just seems, it's a little beyond my ability to articulate. But this phosphorus, it works for burns, and I just think that's an interesting, electroshock. I just think it's worth thinking about. And then there's, let's see, and then there's a remedy called X-ray, and this minimizes genetic damage following exposure to radiation. So I wonder, for those who are on their devices all the time and under a cell phone tower, if that X-ray remedy might be helpful. And so continuing with the stabilizing people, so I'm going to go into, this is not so much about electromagnetics and the flu, but I do feel it's interesting and relevant. So for fear, anxiety, and despair, argentum nitricum is recommended. So it's anticipatory anxiety with strange fears or phobias. Oops. And then there's Arsenicum album, fear of death or disease, restlessness leading to exhaustion, controlling behavior of others and circumstances, anxiety worse after midnight. Then there's Gelsenium, anxiety with weakness and trembling, needs support when standing, wants to be alone, and I'm feeling called to talk about grief. So there's the Ignatia Amara for acute grief. So that would be the immediate shock of grief and brooding, sighing. And then the next one is phosphoric acid. So that's indifferent, apathetic, physically weak with grief, slow to answer, silently suffering, lack of energy, exhausted, anger. Then there's chamomile, which is anger with contrariness, discontented and dissatisfied no matter what is done, can't be pleased, hypersensitive, intolerant of pain, even from minor injuries. There's Nox vomica. We've heard about this one. Angry, irritable, driven, impatient, irritable, and interrupted, or obliged to answer, intolerant of others, especially if they're perceived as being too slow or doing inappropriate things. And then there's staph sagria, suppressed anger, indignation following humiliation. So the next section is injuries and wounds. So this one, so that's, I'm not going to go into that. The next one is infected wounds, boils, and abscesses. The next one is bites and stings rather. Next one will be gangrene. Next one is sunburn or heat, sunstroke. And I'm trying to see if this is the one with okay, so I mean that might be the sunburn one might be relevant to EMFs, but exhaustion and collapse. Let's see. So we disease prevention. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. So it gives familiar diseases we've all heard about, and being that in originally when technology was rolled out, if history is accurate, that the flu happened to occur, be documented the same time technology was rolled out. So for influenza, Gelsenium semivarans is recommended for the flu, and I would call it electromagnetic flu. Arsenicum album is also recommended. Rus toxicodendron is recommended, or Eupatorium parafoliatum, or the nosode. I'm not sure what a nosode is. Anyways, I do think that's an important thing to add, and yeah, so I think that was kind of an interesting topic for me to look at homeopathic remedies, since it's possible that electromagnetics might have something to do with people coming down with the flu. And of course, there's probably different types of flus, but it seems to me, or at least from a lot of the research I've done, that electromagnetics can cause flu-like symptoms. So I would then try one of those influenza remedies and see if that can help for when people are feeling like they're coming down with the flu. So hopefully that was interesting. And it was for me too, so I had to share. God bless.